There is a place within you that is untouched by the noise of the world. A space so vast, so alive, so intensely present that when you enter it, time slows down. The mind quiets, the heart opens, and in that moment you realize this is where life truly begins. But most people never touch this space. They run, always running, chasing, wanting, fixing, fighting, lost in thoughts that pull them into a past that no longer exists and a future that isn't real. They live on the surface, tossed and turned by the waves of their own restless minds, never still, never here. And yet, look at nature. A mountain does not chase after the wind. It stands unmoved. A river does not cling to the rocks. It flows effortlessly, without resistance. A tree does not rush to grow. It simply grows. In stillness there is life. In stillness there is power. There was a man once, overwhelmed, exhausted, on the verge of breaking under the weight of his own mind. Every thought was a battle. Every moment was a struggle. He could not escape the storm inside him. And so he did something he had never done before. He stopped completely. He sat in silence, no longer fighting, no longer trying to fix anything, just sitting, just breathing. And then it happened. A space opened, a vastness, a peace so deep, so profound, that for the first time in his life he was, that man was me, that man was you, that man was everyone who has ever paused long enough to listen to the silence beneath the noise. You do not need to go anywhere to find peace. You do not need to achieve, accomplish, or conquer anything to feel whole. You were never broken. The stillness is already here. It always has been. So be here, fully. Feel the breath entering your body. Listen to the silence between sounds. Watch the mind without getting lost in it. Because the moment you become still, truly still, you will see. Life is not something happening to you, it is you. And you are infinite. Stillness is not emptiness, it is the fullness of presence. It is not the absence of movement, but the presence of something deeper, something vast and alive. When people hear the word stillness, they often imagine lifelessness, a void, an absence of action. But stillness is not lifeless, it is life in its purest form. It is the space where existence is felt most deeply, where you are no longer caught in the distractions of the mind, but are fully here, fully awake. Think of the night sky. In its vast silence, it is not empty. It holds entire galaxies, stars burning with unimaginable energy. Yet, from a distance, all of that intensity appears as a serene, boundless expanse. This is the paradox of stillness. It contains everything while appearing as nothing. It is not passive. It is the birthplace of all action, all movement, all clarity. Most people move through life in a constant state of mental agitation, always reacting, always thinking, always reaching for the next moment. But when you stop, when you allow yourself to rest in pure awareness, you come into contact with something extraordinary, the raw essence of life itself, not life as an idea, not life as a series of events, but life as a direct, undeniable presence. Imagine sitting by the ocean watching the waves crash and retreat, crash and retreat. If you focus only on the waves, you may believe the ocean is chaotic, restless. But when you step back, when you take in the vastness of it, you realize something deeper. Beneath the waves, the ocean is still, always. The surface may move, but the depth remains undisturbed. That depth exists within you. Beneath the surface noise of thoughts, emotions, and external distractions, there is a profound stillness that is never shaken, never disturbed. In that stillness, you do not lose anything, you do not become less, you do not stop experiencing life. In fact, the opposite happens. You feel more, you see more, you become more aware of the richness of every moment. A simple breath becomes an entire universe. The sound of the wind, the warmth of the sun, the rhythm of your own heartbeat, these things which were always there suddenly reveal themselves in a way they never have before. When you are still, truly still, you realize that you are not separate from life. You are not an isolated individual moving through time. You are the space in which life happens. And in that realization, fear dissolves, worry fades. The endless chase for something more disappears because you see there is nothing missing, there is nothing to chase. In the fullness of presence, you recognize that you are already whole. You always have been. The mind is like a restless river, always flowing, always pulling you somewhere, back into the past, forward into the future, never allowing you to simply be. It creates an illusion that life is happening somewhere else, in some other moment, rather than here. But the truth is, reality exists only in the now. The past is nothing more than a collection of memories, thoughts about things that are no longer happening. The future is nothing more than a projection of the mind, an imagined reality that has not yet come to be. And yet, people spend most of their lives lost in one or the other, missing the only thing that is real, this moment. Have you ever noticed how the mind clings to the past, replaying events, regrets, conversations that ended long ago? Or how it leaps into the future, creating endless possibilities, some exciting, some terrifying, none of which exist in reality? The more you follow these thoughts, the more you become trapped in time, lost in a world of illusions. You may find yourself longing for something that is already gone, or fearing something that may never come. In both cases, you are absent from life as it is. But when you bring your awareness to this moment, something shifts. The grip of time loosens. The mind, which was spinning endlessly, begins to settle. You start to see clearly. You begin to feel life in a way that is raw, immediate, and profound. A simple breath becomes a miracle. The warmth of the sun on your skin, the distant sound of birds, the sensation of your own heartbeat. Suddenly, these things are not ordinary, they are life itself, revealing itself to you in ways you never noticed before. There is a great freedom in realizing that you do not have to be a prisoner of time. You do not have to be bound by the weight of the past or the uncertainty of the future. The only thing you ever truly have is this moment, and this moment is enough. When you fully enter the now, the need to chase, to struggle, to constantly seek something more begins to dissolve. You are no longer running toward some imagined future, no longer dragging the burden of yesterday. You are simply here, and in that you discover a peace that cannot be found anywhere else. This does not mean you forget the past or stop planning for the future. It simply means you are no longer ruled by them. The past becomes a lesson, and in the space between, in the now, you find life in its purest form. Everything you have ever sought, peace, love, joy, clarity, it is all here, waiting in the stillness of this moment, not in some distant tomorrow, not buried in the past, but right here, in the only place life has ever been. Nature holds a secret, one so profound yet so simple that most people overlook it entirely. It does not rush, does not force, does not resist. It moves with an intelligence that is beyond thought, beyond planning, beyond struggle. A tree does not wake up in the morning anxious about how tall it will grow today. A river does not question its path or hesitate before flowing. A flower does not compare itself to another, wondering if it is beautiful enough. Nature simply is. And in that being, there is a stillness, a deep harmony that allows life to unfold effortlessly. Yet human beings have forgotten this way of being. They believe they must push, strive, control every aspect of life. They are taught from an early age that stillness is laziness, that slowing down means falling behind, that life must be a constant race towards some imagined destination. But where does all this effort lead? Restlessness, exhaustion, a feeling that no matter how much they do, it is never enough. And all the while, nature continues its quiet lesson, waiting for those who are willing to listen. If you sit by a lake on a windless day, the water is so still that it reflects the sky perfectly like a mirror. But the moment a rock is thrown in, ripples distort the surface and the reflection is lost. The same is true for the mind. When it is restless, filled with worry, fear, and endless thoughts, it distorts reality. It cannot see life as it is. It reacts, struggles, resists. But when the mind becomes still, like an undisturbed lake, clarity emerges. Everything becomes sharper, more vivid. The answers that seemed so distant come effortlessly. Consider the eagle. It does not waste energy flapping its wings constantly. Instead, it waits for the right wind current, spreads its wings, and allows itself to be carried. It understands something that most humans do not. There is a force greater than effort. There is a flow to life, an unseen intelligence that moves through everything. When you align yourself with this, when you stop forcing and start trusting, life begins to carry you in ways you never imagined. You are no longer fighting against the current, you are moving with it. The lesson of nature is not in action, but presence. It is not about sitting motionless, doing nothing. It is about acting from a place of stillness, moving with awareness, trusting that life knows what it is doing. The tree does not doubt its ability to grow, it simply grows. The river does not resist the rocks in its path, it flows around them. The sun does not struggle to shine, it simply shines. And you, when you step out of the noise of the mind, out of the endless struggle to control everything, you find that life moves through you in the same effortless way. The more you align with this natural rhythm, the more you realize that peace is not something to be found, but something that has been here all along. You do not need to chase peace. It is not something outside of you, not something you must earn or find in the distant future. Peace is already within you, hidden beneath the layers of thought, waiting to be recognized. But most people do not see it. They search endlessly, believing that peace will come when they fix everything in their lives, when they achieve their goals, when they have more money, when they find the right relationship, when the world around them finally aligns with their expectations. But this search is endless because the mind always creates new conditions, new requirements, new reasons why peace cannot be felt right now. A person who is constantly chasing the next moment can never be at peace in this one. They believe peace is something external, something that will arrive when all the pieces of life fall into place. But have you ever noticed that even when you achieve what you once thought would bring peace, the mind quickly moves on to the next problem, the next desire, the next thing to fix? It never stops. It keeps you running, always a step away from the stillness that is already here. Imagine a vast clear sky. It is open, infinite, untouched. But clouds form, thoughts, worries, fears. The sky does not fight them. It does not chase them away. It simply remains, unchanged, allowing the clouds to come and go. If you become lost in the clouds, if you identify with every passing thought, you forget the vast sky behind them. But the moment you step back, the moment you realize that you are not the clouds, but the sky itself, everything changes. The thoughts may still come, but they no longer define you. You see them as passing forms, nothing more. And in that awareness, peace emerges, not because you have forced it, but because you have stopped resisting it. There was once a man who spent his whole life searching for peace. He traveled to distant lands, read every book, sought every teacher, but still he felt restless. One day, exhausted from the search, he sat down under a tree and simply listened to the wind, to the birds, to the sound of his own breath. And in that moment, without trying, he felt something he had never felt before, a silence deeper than thought, a stillness beyond the mind. He had not found peace. He had simply stopped looking for it, and there it was, exactly where it had always been. Peace is not a destination. It is not waiting in the future. It is here, in this moment, in the space between thoughts, in the breath that moves through you, in the awareness that watches everything unfold. It has never been missing, only overlooked. The more you stop searching, the more you realize you are not separate from peace. You are peace itself. Silence is not the absence of sound, it is the presence of awareness. It is not an empty void, but a space filled with deep intelligence, a gateway into something greater than thought. People often fear silence. They feel uneasy when conversation fades, when the distractions of the world disappear, when they are left alone with themselves. They reach for noise, for stimulation, for anything that fills the quiet, because they have been conditioned to believe that silence is emptiness. But true silence is not a lack, it is a presence, a vast living presence that can only be felt when the mind stops searching for something to grasp. If you have ever walked alone in nature, far from the noise of the world, You may have felt it, the stillness between the rustling leaves, the space between the bird songs, the depth beneath the flowing river. There is something there, something beyond words, something untouched by thought. It is not just silence, it is awareness itself, a profound presence that is always here, but so often overlooked. The more you listen to it, the more you realize that it has a quality beyond sound, beyond form. It is not an empty space, but a fullness, a depth that holds everything. There was once a man who spent his days constantly moving, filling every moment with activity, with thoughts, with plans. He believed that silence was useless, a waste of time. But one day, while sitting by a quiet lake, he stopped. He had no goal, no task, no need to fill the moment with something. For the first time, he simply listened. And in that silence he felt something shift. The weight of his thoughts lifted, the noise of his mind faded, and for a moment there was nothing but presence. In that nothingness he found everything. The stillness was not empty, it was alive, and in that aliveness he felt more connected to life than he ever had before. People search endlessly for answers, for clarity, for peace, but they do not realize that the greatest wisdom arises not from thinking, but from listening. Not from adding more, but from becoming still enough to hear what has always been there. A mind filled with noise cannot perceive truth clearly. It distorts reality, like a rippling pond unable to reflect the sky. But when the surface becomes still, the reflection becomes clear. When you listen deeply, you do not just hear sounds, you hear space. You hear the silence that holds everything together, the silence that is never truly absent, even in the loudest places. And in that silence you begin to recognize something profound, the same stillness that exists in nature, in the vastness of the sky, in the quiet of the early morning, exists within you. It has always been there, beneath the noise of the mind, beneath the distractions of the world. It does not need to be created, only noticed. And when you notice it, you realize that silence is not an absence at all. It is the most powerful presence at all. Stopping is the beginning of awakening. In a world that glorifies speed, movement, and relentless pursuit, stopping feels unnatural. People believe that if they pause, they will fall behind, that if they do not keep striving, they will lose their way, and so they keep moving, chasing goals, solving problems, endlessly reaching for something more. But what if the very thing they seek is not ahead of them, but right here? What if peace, clarity, and freedom are not found in the next achievement, but in the simple act of stopping? There was once a man who spent his life running, not physically, but mentally. His thoughts never stopped, his worries never ended. He was always planning, analyzing, and preparing for a future that never seemed to arrive. One day, exhausted, he sat down beneath a tree. He had no energy left to think, to plan, to move. He simply sat, and for the first time in his life he noticed something extraordinary. Silence, not the absence of sound, but the absence of struggle. The world around him had not changed, but something within him had. He was no longer chasing, he was no longer resisting, he was simply here. And in that moment he felt something he had never felt before: peace. People believe they need to do something to find peace, but in truth, they only need to stop, not stop living, not stop taking action, but stop the endless mental noise that keeps them trapped in time, regretting the past, fearing the future, resisting what is. The moment you stop trying to escape the present, you realize there was never anything to escape from. Life was never against you. Reality was never the enemy. It was only the mind, always searching, always running, that created the illusion of struggle. Imagine standing in a river with strong currents. The more you fight, the more you struggle, the more exhausted you become. But the moment you stop resisting, the moment you allow yourself to flow with the water rather than against it, everything changes. The effort disappears, the struggle dissolves, and suddenly you are not drowning, you are floating. Life is the same way. The more you fight against the present moment, the more painful it becomes. But when you stop, when you let go of the resistance, life carries you effortlessly. Stopping does not mean inaction, it means presence. It means allowing yourself to fully experience this moment without needing to change it, without labeling it as good or bad, without trying to control it. It means stepping back from the endless cycle of thought and recognizing that you are not your mind, not your worries, not your fears. You are something deeper, something vast, still, and infinitely aware. And in that space, everything becomes clear. Answers arise without effort, struggles dissolve without force, and you realize that what you were searching for was never in the future, never outside of you. It was always here, waiting in the silence, in the stillness, in the simple act of stopping. You are not your thoughts. This is one of the most liberating truths. Yet it is also one of the hardest to grasp. From the moment you wake up, thoughts flood your mind, some familiar, some new, some loud, some subtle. They tell you who you are, what you should do, what you should fear, what you should want. And without question, most people believe them. They identify with every passing thought as if it were a part of their being. But what if thoughts were not who you are? What if they were simply events like clouds drifting across the sky, appearing and disappearing on their own? Imagine sitting by the ocean watching the waves roll in and out. The waves are not the ocean itself. They are simply movements upon its surface. Beneath them, the depth of the ocean remains still, undisturbed. Your mind is the same. Thoughts may rise and fall, but beneath them there is a presence that remains unchanged. That presence is you. The more you identify with the waves, the more chaotic life feels. But when you recognize that you are the ocean itself, not just a surface movement, you experience a profound shift. You are no longer at the mercy of every passing thought. You can observe them without being controlled by them. There was once a man who was deeply troubled. His mind never stopped racing, filled with worries, fears, and regrets. No matter how much he tried to silence his thoughts, they always returned, overwhelming him. One day he met a wise teacher who gave him a simple instruction. For the next few minutes, just observe your thoughts without following them. Watch them like clouds in the sky. Don't judge them. Don't resist them. Don't try to change them. Just watch. At first the man found it difficult. His thoughts were strong, pulling him into their stories, but then something changed. He noticed that the more he simply observed, the less power his thoughts had. They came and went, but he no longer felt trapped inside them. For the first time, he experienced a glimpse of true freedom, the freedom of knowing that he was not his thoughts. Most suffering comes not from the events of life, but from the thoughts about those events. A simple setback can spiral into despair when the mind attaches stories to it. This always happens to me. I will never succeed. I am not good enough. These are just thoughts, but when believed, they shape reality. The moment you step back and see them for what they are, just patterns of the mind, not ultimate truths, you loosen their grip. You are no longer the storm, you're the sky that holds it. This does not mean thoughts should be rejected. The mind is a tool, and thoughts can be useful when observed with awareness. But they are not you. The real you is the silent observer beneath them, the still presence that remains no matter how loud or chaotic the mind becomes. When you recognize this, life takes on a new quality, one of peace, clarity, and effortless freedom. Let go. These two words carry immense power, yet they are often misunderstood. People think letting go means giving up, walking away, or becoming indifferent. But true letting go is none of these things. It is not weakness, it is not avoidance, and it is not resignation. It is freedom. It is the art of releasing what no longer serves you, of unburdening yourself from the weight of control, expectation, and attachment. It is not about losing anything. It is about making space for what is real, for what is alive, for what is unfolding in this moment without resistance. The human mind clings. It clings to people, to ideas, to identities, to stories. It clings because it believes that holding on will provide security, stability, and certainty. But in reality, clinging creates suffering. When you hold on to the past, you carry the weight of something that no longer exists. When you cling to an imagined future, you live in fear, anxiety, or expectation. But life does not exist in the past or the future. It only exists here now. And the tighter you hold on, the more you miss what is actually happening. Imagine holding a rope that is burning your hands. The more you grip it, the more it hurts. But something in your mind tells you that if you let go, you will fall, that you will lose something important. So you keep holding on, enduring the pain, not realizing that freedom is just one movement away. Letting go is not falling. It is realizing you were never truly trapped to begin with. It's the moment when you release the struggle and discover that you were always supported, always held by something greater than your own grasping. There was once a woman who spent years resenting someone from her past. She carried the pain of betrayal, replaying the events in her mind over and over, believing that by holding on to her anger, she was somehow protecting herself. But one day she realized something. Her resentment was not punishing the other person. It was only poisoning her own life, keeping her trapped in a past that no longer existed. And so she made a choice. She did not excuse the betrayal. She did not pretend it had never happened, but she stopped carrying it. She stopped feeding it. She let go. And in that letting go, she felt something she had not felt in years. lightness. A burden she had carried for so long simply dissolved, not because the past changed, but because she no longer needed to hold on to it. Letting go does not mean you stop caring. It does not mean you withdraw from life. It means you surrender your resistance, your need to control what cannot be controlled. It means trusting the flow of life rather than fighting against it. It means releasing the illusion that your peace depends on anything outside of you. And when you finally let go, you realize that you were never holding on to life. Life was always holding you. Stillness is not something to be achieved, it is something to be realized. It has always been here, beneath the noise, beneath the endless movement of the mind. It is not found in the future, nor in external achievements, but in the present moment. The only place life truly exists. Nature has always known this secret. The river does not resist its path. The tree does not struggle to grow. The sky does not cling to passing clouds. There is no force, no conflict, only flow, only presence. And in this effortless unfolding, there is a deep intelligence, a harmony beyond thought. This same intelligence moves through you, through every breath, through every heartbeat, through every moment of awareness. The mind tells you to chase, to strive, to hold on. It tells you that peace will come when everything is perfect, when the past is resolved, when the future is certain. But the mind is never satisfied. It keeps searching for what has never been lost. The truth is simple. Peace is not found by adding more, but by letting go. Letting go of control, of resistance, of identification with every passing thought. Letting go does not mean giving up. It means waking up. It means realizing that the struggle was never necessary, that freedom has always been within you. When you stop running, when you stop clinging, when you allow yourself to simply be, something shifts. The noise fades, the struggle dissolves, and what remains is presence, awareness, life itself, not as an idea, not as something to be understood, but as a direct experience. In that moment, you realize that you were never separate from stillness, never separate from peace. You were it all along.